Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are at. Welcome to another weekly installment of the Minority Report. I am Shark. I'm your producer and also a panelist member. And also joining me, we have Alejandro.
Hello, everybody.
And our newest member to the Minority Report panel, we have Doug Memphis.
What's going on, everyone?
And Raphael and Damon will be joining us soon. But our special guest for tonight, today, we have Laura from Defend Europa.
Hey guys, thanks for the invite.
Anytime. So Defend Europa, when we were talking about it earlier today on kind of the prep, so Defend Europa is different from Voice of Europe. I keep getting those two confused for some reason.
Yeah, that's right. So before Voice of Europe had their own website, they used to post just articles from other websites, and they used to post Defend Europa ones quite a lot. But they'd always kind of leave the ones out that were like a little bit edgy, so they just kind of focus on the civic nationalist sort of stuff. But then there was kind of a bit of a disagreement between us and them, and they don't post our stuff anymore. But they have their own website now, and they do their thing and we do our thing. So yeah, they're completely unrelated. They're not linked at all.
Fair enough. And I'm assuming you guys just only cover what's going on in Europe, or do you guys also cover what's going on in like Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa?
Just Europe, actually, and we do South Africa, but that's because like over the last couple of years, nobody's really focused much on like the farm murders and the land expropriation bill and things like that. So we have a guy from South Africa with us called Nick. So he reports news straight from South Africa, and he tells us about any new farm murders and stuff like that. So we do report from South Africa as well. But other than that, it's just Europe. And we have around 35 people now. So we have people in England, Scotland, France, Germany, Finland, Norway, the Netherlands, Croatia, Italy and Poland. So we pick up local news stories that the media aren't reporting, and then we push them through our platform. So we've been going for around 2 years now, and I think we have around 1,000 articles on the website.
So each of the members from different countries, they're kind of like, they pretty much report to you when they report news in their own homelands. But do they have other people working with them too that they have? Well, of course, they probably have to get heavily vetted, but they have people that help them out also in those countries for each representative.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of people have got connections in different countries. I'm probably not allowed to talk about it live on air, but most people do focus on their own countries. So when I'm writing articles, I'll usually write about England, but I sometimes write about Sweden and Germany and stuff as well. So you don't just have to focus on your own country. But I think people do have those kind of connections and, contacts in other groups and stuff. And we do report things sometimes before the mainstream media do. So I know it's not like a huge story, but we broke the story about, Martin Sellner and Brittany Pettibone getting banned from the UK before any other news outlets did, and before like the BBC and the Sky and stuff did over in Britain. So yeah, we do have some contacts on the ground.
Very nice. And Alejandro, Doug, feel free to chip in, if you guys have any questions too.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I have seen that you, one of your collaborators actually covered the case of the election of Bolsonaro in Brazil as well. I have seen that.
Yeah, we have a Portuguese guy who has contacts in Brazil. He's called Beirão. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I always get it wrong. And he focused on the entire election and then, reporting the results and stuff like that. So we were able to cover the Bolsonaro election and victory from start to finish, really, which was good. It's not really a topic that I know about. I mean, I know kind of what he stands for and his policies and stuff, and I know his strengths and weaknesses, but it's actually always good for you to learn stories from the other people at Defend Europa as well, because I don't really know anything about Brazil, to be honest. But yeah, we did cover Bolsonaro, and he seems to be doing well. He's saying the right things and annoying the right people. What do you guys think about him?
He reinstalled the Chicago Boys from the school of Milton Friedman. So there are going to be some neoliberal policies over there, but one has to be a skeptic. Not everything could be perfect, or not everything could be that bad. But we are going to cover that more on the second hour, so please stay with us. And at the same time, I wanted to ask you if there are some news regarding, for example, places like Uruguay or Argentina as well, which is full of white people as well. You're from the European stock.
Well, I'm not sure on that one, to be honest. Sorry about that, but we could focus on that because obviously we focused on Brazil and that's not in Europe. But I guess we would need to find somebody who knew enough about that, or we'd have to do our own research and stuff. But it is kind of difficult just staying on top of Europe, to be honest, because we are all volunteers, so none of us get paid anything for Defend Europa. We all have full-time jobs and stuff as well. And it is sometimes difficult to kind of stay on top of what's going on just in your own country, never mind your entire continent. And it's sometimes difficult to get the articles out on time, as the news breaks. But I definitely would be interested in focusing on other white countries. If anyone has any information or if they want us to write an article or do a podcast episode about it, feel free to send it over. But yeah, I think we all kind of feel that connection between other people of European descent. So anything like that, yeah, we are happy to cover.
Yeah, definitely, because we are trying to get the guys from Argentinian poll on this show as well. So maybe I will drop by the idea to them, no, so to see what they say about that. But anyways, Memphis, do you have any other questions as well?
Not so much questions because I just kind of wholeheartedly agree with her sentiment. As far as it can be tricky trying to get a conception of these same conflicts we have, whether it's in Europe, South America, the U.S., it can be kind of hard to wrap your head around, an entire geopolitical conception. But I guess one question I would have as someone else who's getting to learn a little bit more about, say, European identity at overseas. I know the free speech rights aren't as emboldened over there. What kind of opposition have you faced just with your movement and your guys' publication?
Yeah, well, that's correct. Free speech is basically we don't really have it in Britain. Some countries in Europe seem to be better than others. Obviously, in countries like Germany, it's illegal to say like negative things about certain historical events. We don't actually have a law in relation to the Holocaust, but there are certain catches in the law where they can get you for saying certain things. But we have a really big push on hate crimes in Britain at the moment. So if you show hostility towards somebody based on, I think it's race, religion, disability, sexual orientation and gender identity, then that can be classed as a hate crime. And you don't even necessarily need to encourage violence. It could just be that you're using insulting language or somebody perceives you to use insulting language. So, I mean, what does insulting mean? There's no kind of strict guidelines. So, yeah, you are completely walking on eggshells. And there was a guy who was with the yellow vests in Britain who was arrested today because he shouted Nazi at Anna Subra. I don't know if you guys saw that. So it's fine to call us Nazis all the time, but then when someone on the right calls somebody on the left a Nazi, then it's a hate crime and he's been arrested for that. But yeah, we certainly don't have free speech in Britain. We've had people arrested. I mean, Jez Turner went to prison for talking about, the one topic that we're not allowed to talk about. And Alison Shablaws was arrested for singing songs about the Holocaust, just comedy songs on YouTube. But again, it's freedom of speech. You should be allowed to do that. And there's other incidents as well where people have just said things and then either been arrested or lost their jobs. Or in fact, I have a friend who was arrested for writing a joke about Hitler on Twitter. He was reported by a load of people on Twitter and the police turned up at his house and he got a fine and community service just for writing a joke on Twitter. So yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. And that's the reason why I don't go on camera, to be honest, because although I have my real picture up, I kind of don't want to, be out there too much because I do have a normal job and stuff. And to be honest, when I started this, I already had my picture up. If I could restart, I probably wouldn't put it up. But there is a big risk for people losing their jobs and even getting a criminal record just for saying things that are offensive.
Well, I wholeheartedly I don't blame you. I think I'm probably in that same boat with you. If I could, maybe go about it a different way, maybe I'd consider it. But that's why it's so beneficial for, at least myself, I'm in this because I want to maintain what little semblance of that free speech that has been preserved. It's had to be actively preserved for the very short life of our country's history, and so that's why I'm thankful to have people like you come on here, to where even though we might not be able to understand every single nuance to a foreign government or a foreign people's struggle, there's a whole lot of these other more finite points that it's important to draw attention to because. At the end of the day, I would like to think there can be people who will try to maintain a bastion of some semblance of these civil rights. And, thanks for coming on and talking about your guys' struggle.
That's okay.
So I haven't been following much on what's going on in Austria. I just remember when they during the elections they elected a leader named Sebastian Kurz that's seen as like a right-wing populist. But what I also learned, since I'm a Eurasian nationalist in Austria right now, she told me that there's actually another party that's actually farther right or considered more based than Sebastian Kurz, and their MP actually is a lot more. I think he's anti-EU, and that's the thing. Sebastian Kurz is seen more as like a moderate right-wing populist, while the other MP was kind of more farther out there. Like, what's going on in Austria? All I know right now, or I hear about, is like Sebastian Kurz, youngest prime minister ever in Austria. I mean, he's only 31, and Richard Spencer talks about this too, where he believes that, when it comes to a prime minister or a president, we're more likely going to see millennials as the next president or prime minister after boomers than Gen X. And Sebastian Kurz is only 31 and he's a millennial, but there's just something about him that's just really interesting.
Yeah, he's definitely got the right look, hasn't he? He's definitely appealing, and obviously it's the European elections as well coming up soon. But I think I'm not 100% sure about him. I think he's one to watch because it's been a while since the Austrian elections, actually, so I was hoping that he might have done something by now to convince me. But there's a lot of kind of, pro-Israel stuff that comes out of his mouth. And you sometimes think, are you just doing that because you're saying the right thing, to get the right people on side? Or do you actually believe that? And is that the direction that you're going to head? But I wouldn't say that I'm kind of overwhelmed by what he's done and what he's said so far. But that doesn't mean that I'm ruling him out. And it kind of annoys me when people do purity spiral about European politicians because I like Salvini, for example, and the stuff that he's doing, with closing the ports, closing the airports, openly talking about remigration, openly talking about taking money from migrants and giving that to Italians, helping the homeless and that kind of stuff. And then he goes to Israel once or has a photograph taken with an Israeli flag once and everyone's like, right, I disavow Salvini. And I just think that's a little bit daft because he is pulling us in the right direction and he is doing good things. So I don't want to kind of purity spiral about Sebastian Kurz as well, but I wouldn't say that I'm completely overwhelmed by him at the moment. But he's one to watch, definitely. He is only young, like you said, and he's doing better than Britain, isn't he? I mean, we've got Theresa May in charge, who's just absolutely atrocious.
Well, there's having your picture taken with an Israeli flag, and then there's having your kids do slumber parties over at Benjamin Netanyahu's house. And I think that's kind of what you were asking, what we thought about Bolsonaro. I know that people have given him a lot of flack because his kids always rocking the IDF shirts and all that other tough guy apparel.
And then, well, President Trump, too. I mean, one of his daughters is married to an Israeli. And, Eric and Don Jr. were, too. But Don Jr. got a divorce, and he's dating some, like, I don't know, she's, like, in her 40s or something, Kimberly Guilfoyle, and she's, like, Hispanic. And she kind of, I don't know, it's either, what do you guys think in the chat? Is Kimberly Guilfoyle more of a mestiza or a castiza? Like, it's just, like, in certain pictures, it says a different message, but I think this is the problem, especially with these, whether they're boomers or civnats or alt-light in other countries. They look at Israel and they see it as like, well, these guys are nationalistic, they're based, they have pride for their country, they have a wall. Look at how badass Bibi was. They show pictures of his younger days when he was in the IDF. And it's like, oh, this guy is like, this is who we should strive after. But they fail to understand they have the "this is for me but not for thee" attitude. And just because Israel is based, or they say they support certain aspects of nationalism in so-and-so countries, they really don't care about them. They're just saying that so they could get more foreign aid. It's kind of like you're kissing the feet just so you could get some extra money or shekels in order to keep a country flowing. And I think that's the problem with Bolsonaro. I mean, Bolsonaro, 63, I know I shouldn't always be talking about boomers because, it's all generations too, but, it's the same problem. He probably looked at Israel as, like, they're based, they're nationalistic, they have a wall, they, take care of, or they know how to defend off invasions. But in reality, it's, it's a whole different world over there, and, a lot of them don't like us.
Yeah. I mean, that whole Zion nationalism just completely winds me up. We have people like Katie Hopkins in Britain who says some really spot on things when it comes to, like, the 93 gender stuff, and that we should be able to talk about white well-being. But then she'll do stuff like go and have photographs taken with the Israeli army and basically encourage her followers to join up with the Israeli army. And I just think, like, why is that your priority? Like, you're British, you should have / like Britain and stuff in your profile, not Israel, and you should have British flags, not Israeli flags. But we have a lot of those kind of groups in Britain that we don't know who's funding them. Tommy Robinson, and there was the Day for Freedom March and stuff like that, and they do tend to link back to Israel quite a lot. But yeah, I agree what you said. I mean, there's things that you can learn from people even if you dislike them, and I think Israel do some stuff right, and that, I mean, they have a really strong identity that we're not allowed to have. So I don't think you should just be like, we have a problem with them, we can't learn anything from them. I think you can still learn things from your enemies, but I don't think we should be all, pally and best friends with them. Definitely not.
Yeah, definitely. Because to defeat an enemy, you must know them. Not only their battle tactics, but also their history, their art, and their philosophy, in order to make them their architects of their own destruction, basically. But as well, I do believe that there are some things to learn, like what you said about Zionism, and the Israel establishment, how they do things, but in order to counter them, not in order to do them ourselves, because that's going to be very problematic. Because the network they have established over the years, it's really strong, and yeah, I already made the case on the previous Minority Report about the certain agent glowing in the dark with a big nose following our movement, but he's finally gone, so we are okay for now. But yeah, remember that these people, when you are going to make a big move in order to take back your country, they are going to oppose that, because that goes against their financial interests. Always remember that. But anyways, Shark. Also, Laura, I wanted to ask you about the Matteo Salvini. Right now is trying to build like an anti-EU bloc with, I believe it was with Poland and with Hungary. They are trying to do something like that. Can you expand us more on that topic?
Yeah, there's collaboration going on between, I think it's Italy, Poland, Hungary, and Marine Le Pen, obviously in France, is involved. And we have an MEP called Janice Atkinson who's involved as well. So they're working together and having lots of meetings and stuff. They're all members of the European Parliament, and they've got this strong bloc within the EU, really. So they... one of the difficulties is that I think Salvini is friends with Bannon, so Salvini is saying that we should get America involved with this, but then some members, such as Marine Le Pen, for example, are saying that it's not up to America to save Europe and we need to save ourselves. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure what else to add, but there is collaboration going on between these countries. Viktor Orban obviously met Salvini, I think it was about 6 months ago now as well, wasn't it? So, I mean, it's promising to see. I'm just gutted that the only kind of person that we have in Britain who seems to be saying the right things is Janice Atkinson, and she's not actually a member of Parliament. She used to be with UKIP, but she left, and now she's an independent member of the European Parliament. But she's really, really good. But that's kind of the only influence that we have, really, who doesn't seem to be kind of a little bit dodgy, you know, and in the wrong pockets and stuff. And I met her at the Traditional Britain Group conference, which was in December, and had a bit of a chat with her. And she's very based, you know, she's not one of those kind of like civic nationalist kind of, you know, like in Israel's pockets kind of person either. She does say the right things, but also she knows what she can say publicly as well. So yeah, it seems that she's the only one in Britain at the minute. But yeah, just to answer your question, I think obviously Viktor Orban's involved from Hungary, Salvini and Di Maio from Italy, Marine Le Pen in France, because Macron's approval rating now, I think it was at only around 18% last time I checked. So Le Pen's approval rating is above his at the moment. So hopefully she can do well over there. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else to add on it, but there is positive collaboration going on in Europe at the moment.
What's funny is that Salvini's not even the prime minister, but people think, you know, because he does so much work and he's very outgoing, people, you know, mistake him as a prime minister. Though the next elections, I would not be surprised if him and his party become the majority and Salvini becomes the next prime minister. What's interesting, what I learned, since he's considered the deputy prime minister or the interior minister, that's the equivalent of what we have here in the U.S., the Department of Homeland Security, or the Attorney General. Which makes a lot of sense, because what he's focusing on is stopping the migrants from coming in, or processing more deportations, which, hell, our Attorney General here couldn't even do that. I wish we had someone like Salvini that wasn't the Attorney General here.
Yeah, and I've actually done a couple of streams with Americans where they have thought that Salvini is the, you know, the leader of Italy. He's not. He's deputy prime minister, but also the interior minister. So he's in charge of immigration and stuff. But I think he broke a record for having some sort of huge social media following, and he does use Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter quite religiously. So when the media are criticising him and stuff, he always either responds to them on that, or he says what they're going to say before they say it. So he has access to a lot of people. And he is very based. Like I said earlier, he does talk openly about remigration. He talks about taking money from migrants and giving them to Italian people. He also spoke about, I don't know if you guys saw the big rant that he had on a talk show where he upset a load of feminists. But he was talking about, because in Italy they were saying, let's just spread the migrants around the country so that there's only a few, you know, in each city, and they don't have as big of an impact. And he just said outright, like, no, we're not spreading them around the country, we're sending them back home. So he's great, and I wouldn't say he's perfect. You know, he has said a few pro-Israeli things sometimes, but he is definitely moving people in the right direction. And I would love a Salvini in Britain, even with the flaws that he has.
Does he have the ability to run for something like other than what he the position he holds right now, or does he have to be affiliated with a certain party? I don't know how much they bar it over there. Like, we're pretty much locked into a two-party system over here.
Yeah, I think there's a coalition in Italy between the League Party and the Five Star Movement. Obviously, Salvini's with the League Party, and Luigi Di Maio is with the Five Star Party. So it's not like America in the sense where there's only two parties. There are numerous parties, but Salvini's popularity is just going higher and higher and higher. And the interesting thing is that League Party, I think they were only polling at around 4% about 2 years ago, but now they're the largest party in the country and they're polling at something like 40% or something. So it's a bit of a fairy tale story, really, where they've managed to change that round in 2 years. He's obviously just doing the right thing and keeping the population safe, so they're liking him and they're responding positively to him, which is obviously great.
What's stopping Austria, Hungary, Poland, I think Czech Republic and Italy from forming a Visegrad too, so they don't have to deal with the EU torturing them with sanctions and trying to make them or pressure them into flooding more migrants into the country? What's preventing them right now to form that Visegrad? Do they feel that the economy wouldn't be strong enough under that? Or I know Hungarians that I've talked to, they were talking about how Viktor Orban, this was like one of the flaws he has, is that he doesn't want to leave the EU. He thinks he could either reform it, or because he knows that if they leave the EU, it will hurt their economy. He's pretty much in the EU just for the Gibbs.
Yeah, he's not as vocally against the European Union as other people are, such as Marine Le Pen, obviously, who we mentioned earlier. And we have the UK Independence Party, who they are growing over the last few months or so. But I need to be honest and say that I'm not 100% sure of what his arguments are there and his reasons for wanting to stay in the EU. So I'll have to look that up and maybe respond later if that's okay.
You mentioned UKIP too. UKIP's growing. Are they going in the right direction? I know Sargon tried to join UKIP, and it's almost like he wanted to turn it into some liberalist party. Have they kind of pushed him away, or?
No, it's pathetic. They're just civic nationalists, classical liberals. Gerard Batten, who is their leader, I actually rather like him, and he does tweet about pro-right interests on Twitter sometimes, and you can tell he's kind of just a down-to-earth guy, and there's nobody running his Twitter account and telling him what to say and that, and he does, I do retweet him quite a lot because he does say the right stuff, but the direction of the party doesn't really seem to be moving or accelerating at a good speed, at least. We've got the For Britain party as well, which is run by Anne-Marie Waters, and that's worse. I mean, I have had conversations with foreigners who are in the For Britain party who have told me that they're more British than I am because I don't adapt to British values, and I'm like, my parents are English and their parents are English, and I'm 100% European, and these people aren't even European. So yeah, neither of those parties are very exciting, to be honest, but if I did have to vote today, then I would probably vote for UKIP, but I don't really think we can fix this by voting. But I suppose if they are out there saying the right things, like Gerard Batten does seem to do sometimes, then I suppose that's a positive.
Also, something else that I wanted to ask you is that right now we have been seeing this new movement with the yellow vests within France, but I have also seen yellow vests within the UK. So can you expand on that more, please?
Yeah, it's more of a pro-Brexit thing. So, I mean, it is kind of pitiful in the UK compared to the stuff that I've seen in France. But obviously we're going through a period of turmoil at the moment with Brexit. So we're supposed to be leaving at the end of March, and then a transition period kicks in, which is almost 2 years. But we haven't even agreed upon a deal or whether there's going to be a deal. There could be a general election, or there could be a vote of no confidence, or we could have another second referendum. So nobody really knows what's going on there, because Theresa May, who's our leader, is just an absolute weakling and just such a puppet, and she couldn't get a good deal from the EU, and she doesn't have the balls to just say, well, let's just walk away. So it's just, nobody knows what's happening in the country at the moment. We don't know if we're staying in the EU or leaving it or having another vote. We don't know which party are going to be in power. So the yellow vest people in Britain are more of a pro-Brexit like kind of movement, but the ones that I've seen, they've not been very many people. Sorry, so it's just been groups of like 25 to 30 people. I think there have been some bigger demonstrations as well, but I've not really got any information about them. And it's also been kind of a little bit cringy, you know, with, I mean, that guy that shouted Nazi at Anna Subra, I mean, she's not a Nazi, is it? It's kind of ridiculous. So it is starting over here, but it doesn't look too good yet. It happens in London as well, and obviously you can maybe tell by my accent I'm up in the north of England, so I've not been to any of the demonstrations. But actually, is it starting in America? Because I heard that there was some yellow vest stuff going on in America as well.
Yeah, in different parts of the country. I know in California they had two. I think one in Sacramento and the other one in San Diego. But it's not in all of the U.S. It was just in certain parts of the U.S., certain states, and it's, of course, in the cities. But it's not as intense as it is in France, or it's not as big as it is in France or other parts of Europe.
I think wherever it's going to start happening in America is going to be wherever it's already too little too late. Like, I really see like an area like California. Well, what are you going to do? Purge a quarter of the population that's like a sloth of a heroin addict? Like, at that point, you've just got too many sheer numbers to ever hope to clean it up. No one's going to sign up for that job to go and I mean, look in San Francisco. What did they spend this year? $8 million to clean up poop?
Yeah. They call them the Poop Patrol. I mean, I don't know where they find this money, but then again, I mean, the state's literally broke, and
they just promised to give the new governor just promised free healthcare to illegals.
I think, yeah, Newsom and de Blasio are fighting to become who's becoming the most brain-dead globo homo politician in the U.S. It's like New York and California are trying to race to the bottom of the barrel on most ridiculous states in the U.S.
And Cuomo is trying to get abortions approved, like, up until, like, birth, like the day before a due date.
Well, that's, like, yeah.
It's just lunacy on both sides of the country. Like, eventually they're going to force us all to the middle.
Well, it's crazy because, you know, with Cuomo and Brown, they're very similar, except one's from the West Coast, one's from the East Coast. Their dads were also governors. Like Andrew's dad, Mario Cuomo, and Jerry Brown's dad, Pat Brown, were governors, and they were horrible. But their sons, it's like they're taking the next step and pretty much turning the state into a third world. But right now in California, I think Gavin Newsom, he's trying to be an optics cuck. He was saying things like, I'm not going to pass every single bill. I'm going to veto a certain amount of bills. But, you know, all the third worlders in the Democrat Party in California, they have the super majority in both the Assembly and the state Senate. They're going to be like, I don't care what you say, Newsom. You know, we're going to override your vetoes. We got the super majority. And the reason why he's trying to do that cucking is Ethnarch from FTN believes that he may be a dark horse candidate and throw his hat in the ring for the presidential election in 2020, because he's seen, like, Beto O'Rourke, a millionaire. He presents himself as a self-hating white that panders to non-whites and talks about white privilege and his white guilt and all of this. And I think that's why he's doing what he's doing. But I think I could predict in 10 years California's going to go the path of South Africa. And a lot of people don't believe me, or they think that's crazy. We're not even at that stage yet. But what's going on here right now, it's
they're already ruining Texas and, like, really obscure places, like places that are on that list for the Northwestern Imperative and all that. Like, they're already ruining Idaho just because there's this random obscure migration, because people just throw a dart on the map and go, oh wow, there's really cheap property over here, and it's like causing the property in Idaho to skyrocket. Like, it's just going to turn into another, like, shoddy Colorado type situation.
So, Laura, I had a question with you regarding the Tory government. I heard rumors about they're trying to pressure May to step down, and then there are members of the Tory party that decided to resign because they couldn't deal with it anymore, or there's some that want to take over as the MP. Do you think that would make the difference in the next election, or are people at the point where Britain is in such bad shape that they're just going to throw their hat and vote for Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party?
Yeah, so the Conservative Party, as I said, it's just an absolute mess at the moment. And the deal that Theresa May has got, it basically locks us into the European Union laws. But because we're not a member, we're not able to vote on anything or make a difference. So it's worse than remaining, really. So as I said, nobody knows what direction we are going in with Brexit at the moment. But because her deal is so bad, and because the government have now voted, they're against the no deal option. So it's kind of like, what are we doing? I don't know. Like, are we going with her deal, or maybe she'll be ousted? There are people that have said that she should step down. There was a vote of no confidence, but she did win it, so she didn't have to step down. So I think that, I mean, the public's trust is just so betrayed at the moment. We have absolutely no faith in the government at all. It's just been an absolute shambles from start to finish, because it was 2.5 years ago that we voted to leave the European Union, and we're no further forward at all. So I really do feel like the Conservative Party are finished, to be honest. And obviously they'll always have their loyal voters, people who are kind of more middle class and upper class that vote based on economic things. But yeah, I really do worry that the Labour Party will get into power, because I mean, I'm working class myself, so some of their policies will work better for me, but they openly say that they want no cap on immigration, and they have people. We'd have Diane Abbott in charge of immigration in our country. I don't know if you know who she is, but she's awful. She's this huge Jamaican woman who she's just really, really stupid and really like pro-immigration and anti-white as well. So if Labour get into power, then in one way it will be good, because it will probably kick in acceleration. And I think a lot of people will just think this is, so bad, we need to do something about this. But it will get very worse, I think, very quick. So I'm not sure what the polls are in Britain at the moment, but I think a lot of people have lost faith in the Tory party. I never supported them anyway. I didn't vote for them. And I think Jeremy Corbyn is kind of getting a little bit more support just because so many people are against Theresa May. So we'll have to see what happens. Like I said, we're in a period of change at the moment. We are supposed to be leaving the European Union in 2.5 months, but it doesn't look like that's happening. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Mark Collette has talked about in a few of the podcasts he's been on, and he talked about Corbyn, which was interesting. And I know guys like Eric Stryker kind of agreed with it, where Corbyn is he's kind of like an old school, like what we had here in the U.S., the Southern Democrats, or the old school Democrats, who are the party of the pro-white working class and would actually cater to them until the 1965 Immigration Act, where they opened the borders and they felt that they don't really need to pander out to them anymore, because they could just reach out to the coalition of the ascendant. And Corbyn kind of has those some of those old school like pro-working class beliefs. Collette also mentioned about how he's not really pro-EU, and Brexit, he hasn't came out and said he's anti-Brexit or anything. He's more silent about it, and he's also anti-Zionist. But the thing you have to worry about Corbyn is because of the members of his party, and I think he's one of those open borders guys. He thinks he could reach or achieve those working class policies or a welfare state while opening up the borders. It's kind of the problem we have here in this country, except for us, we have non-white politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that thinks you can have free healthcare, free college, and all these benefits while opening up the borders. Yeah,
so you can't have open borders in a welfare state. It's as simple as that. And in Britain, it does seem like the people who enter the country the last, so the new people, do seem to be at the front of the queue. But like I said, I come from a working class background, so my family have always, up until recently, have always voted for Labour. They now vote for UKIP. Mass immigration started in Britain in 1948 with the British Nationality Act of 1948, and Empire Windrush docked in Tilbury, which is, I think, in Essex near London, with 1,000 Caribbeans on it. And ever since then, our immigration has just shot up. So we were admitting, I think it was around 75,000 people a year over like the 60s, 70s and 80s. But then when it got to 1997, Tony Blair became Prime Minister. And with Barbara Roche and Jack Straw, who are two politicians whose ethnic background you might want to look up, they just accelerated immigration so fast. And in 2004, we actually had more immigrants arrive in Britain than we did between the years 1066 and 1945. So more immigrants in 1 year than in 900 years. And Jeremy Corbyn just has no plans to slow that down at all. So although they're supposed to be the party for the working class, they don't care about the working class, the white working class, sorry. It's only the lazy and like foreigners and stuff. So I mean, I sound here like I'm saying that the Conservatives are better. They're not. Immigration under the Tories has actually got worse. Net immigration at the moment is running at a few 100,000 a year. I think it actually went down last year because of Brexit to around 262,000. But we only have a population of 66 million, so 250,000 net people a year. And the net figure is dodgy anyway, because it might be that a couple of 100,000 white people are leaving, but actually 400 or 500,000 non-Europeans are coming into the country. So yeah, Labour are just an absolute shambles. They're not for the white working class at all. They've got a few good policies for, you know, young people that want to kind of get homes and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't support maybe 90% of what they say.
By the way, Laura, I have to ask you about this. What it will take for the British people in order to rise up or anything else? Do they need maybe a little push, maybe? Because, for example, I do have a thing between our civilization over here in South America and the classic British elite. They are our ancestral enemies, furthermore. So, in my opinion, I would really like to see them burn, to see them executed, and so on, you know. And then for this, I have three options. Maybe one is we become a superpower and we declare war on the British elite. So if you don't want to see your cities burned, maybe, you know, deliver their heads to us. So everyone's happy. The other one, maybe I can try to infiltrate the UK and go full Ted Kaczynski. And the other three is maybe, since you now have a Jamaican woman, perhaps I can do the same thing and become something, you know, LARP as an anti-white person and so on. And then when I reach power, I can move things around. But I don't know. What do you say? What does it takes to make things happen over there?
Oh gosh. Well, I think I'm a fan of William Luther Pierce, and in probably his most famous book, he talks about comfort being the great corrupter and the great maker of cowards. And that is the situation that we're in at the moment. People are just too comfortable. So while people have their Netflix and their TV dinners and their their day jobs and their football at the weekend, they don't care. I'm sure you guys have heard about the grooming gangs. I actually hate that word because it's the mass scale rape of children in Britain, and hundreds of thousands of young English girls have been raped by predominantly Pakistani Muslims. I don't understand why men aren't out there on the streets rioting about this. A lot of men seem more interested in, or more angry rather, at the football team losing at the weekend. So I don't know. I mean, I'm very angry about it, and there are lots of very kind of good guys in the nationalist movement in Britain who are angry about it as well. They're trying to wake people up, and they're trying to form communities and network in real life and become self-sufficient. But I don't know why the public aren't reacting yet. I can only assume that it's because they're too comfortable. But hopefully, as things get worse, because we are expected to become a minority in this country by the year 2066, it will probably be before then. We're already a minority in London, 44.89% white British in London, and that was in 2011. So obviously, as our share of the population drops, crime will rise and IQ will drop and things like that. And I think people will become less comfortable. And hopefully when it affects them directly, they will start to fight back and start to respond.
Laura, while we still get you on, Joaquim had a good question in the chat. I want to run by you. Are you familiar with Enoch Powell?
Yes, absolutely. I love Enoch Powell.
We wanted to get your take on him and if you were familiar with him at all.
Yeah, he's. I mean, he was a conservative politician. He spoke, I think it was something like 4 languages, and wrote about 13 books. He was a very high rank in the British Army as well. And this is back when politicians were something that you could aspire to. And in April 1968, he gave the Rivers of Blood speech in the Parliament, in which he said, in the future, the black man will be in charge of the white man in Britain. And he said, I think he said something like by the year 2000, it will be around 15% non-white or something. And his figure was pretty much spot on. I can't remember the exact number. I don't know if you know it, but he did get it right. And he was hounded out of Parliament and lost his job. But Pauls, at the time, during the period in the 60s when he did give that speech, said that the majority of the public supported him. So even though the public supported him, he lost his job, and that was kind of the end of him. But he predicted what is happening today. I think the only problem, or the only kind of variance to what he said, was that he thought that it would be black people, whereas the main problem that we have in England is people from like Pakistan and Bangladesh and stuff like that. So it's Muslims that are, their share of the population is growing rather rapidly. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Enoch Powell. So thanks for asking me about him. I think he's brilliant, and he was very articulate and very poetic as well. Just a very clever guy. And if you ever get a chance to read any of his books or his writing, I do recommend that.
Yeah, if you guys haven't heard it, definitely listen to the Rivers and Blood speech by Enoch Powell. Some spooky, spot-on stuff.
Also, there is something else I wanted to ask you, because when there has always been this attempt to nationalism within England, for example, in Britain, we have seen that there is a rejection of that from the parts of from Scotland and from Ireland. But now that I have seen that you have been reading the White Nationalist Manifesto, so maybe do you feel that white nationalism would be more appealing to the eyes of the people in Britain, more than British nationalism, for example?
Well, I guess it depends what you mean by white nationalism, because if you're asking me if I'm happy for Britain to be full of anybody as long as they're white, then the answer is no. I want Britain to be full of British people. But Greg Johnson in the White Nationalist Manifesto, that is what he believes as well. So although the umbrella term is white nationalism, it doesn't mean that I have to have 65 million Italians in Britain instead of ethnically British people. So I think sometimes people who aren't European sometimes struggle to understand that British people are very different to Italian people, who are very different to Swedish people, who are very different to Polish people, not only genetically, but culturally as well. And I want to go to Germany and see German people and hear German spoke and see German culture, just like I'd want to do that if I went to Japan or, any country across the globe. So I think as long as we make it clear that by white nationalism, it's more like an umbrella term for the different white ethnicities, then I definitely think that's something that we should be supporting. But I don't really know any Europeans that call themselves a white nationalist. I would call myself an ethno-nationalist, but I wouldn't get offended if somebody called me a white nationalist. I just want to make it clear that in Britain, I want it to be full of British people, not just anybody who's white. And that doesn't mean that I'm against a small amount of immigration from Europe, because that's fine. I mean, I'm my DNA test said that I was 100% European, and it was obviously mainly Germanic and Celtic, but there was a bit of Scandinavian and stuff in there. So there's a lot of kind of crossover between us anyway. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Do you guys kind of see Europe as lots of different nations? Or because sometimes when I speak to Americans on Twitter, they don't seem to understand that we want to remain different to other countries in Europe.
Yeah, I see Europe as different countries, different cultures, languages. The only thing they all have in common is that they're white. But it's very similar to with Eurasians, where you got the Turkic, and then you got Eurasians in other countries where they're just a mixture of Mongoloid and Caucasoid blood. But and even in Central Asia too, like the Kazakhs, the Turkmens, Uzbeks, and even you could also add the Georgians and Azerbaijanis. They're Eurasian, but they're different cultures, different languages, and sometimes different features.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, it would be such a shame if we all just mashed up into one kind of like white blob and there was no more like Swedish culture or Hungarian culture or Italian culture, because we are so different, and the stereotypes that you do see on television, I'm sure that they are kind of real. I mean, the British people are very kind of reserved and very kind of polite. I mean, there's a lad culture at the moment in Britain and feminism, which are obviously corrupting a lot of people. But yeah, it would just be such a shame, I think, for us to lose our diversity as Europeans, definitely.
So we actually have a super chat for $5. The chat wants me to read it, and feel free to answer it if you want. It's $5 from Nathan. Thank you. Has the guest burned the coal and or boned Peter Sweden? And if so, what are her thoughts on his genitalia and legal situation?
What a fantastic question. No, I already answered in the chat that I have not and do not intend to burn the coal. Thank you very much. And the only time I've ever spoken to Peter Sweden was when he called me a Nazi on Twitter, and that was it. So I can't comment on his genitalia, unfortunately.
Also, have you ever read about this case within Britain? The case of Alfie Evans, the kid that actually got executed by the judiciary system.
Yeah, that was that about 6 months ago? Yeah, I followed the story at the time. He was denied medical care. Was that right? I'm not too sure about the story in that much depth, to be honest. But I think his parents were doing a lot of campaigning, trying to obviously cure his problem, and that was turned down by the state. Do you have any more information about that?
Yeah, there was this man that actually ruled for the kid to be executed, basically, because they gave him a little injection. But it was not just one little injection; it was 4 little injections. We know the content of 2 of them, but we still do not know the other 2. This man was named Anthony Hayden, and he also wrote a book called Children and Same-Sex Families, a Legal Handbook. So you might imagine. And he's like a caricature type of person. He's a really weird man, in my opinion. For example, here is the guy. That's his book. Check it out.
Okay, yeah, feel free to send me some information about that and I'll have a look. Yeah, it sounds interesting.
It's on the site.
Yeah, you've sent me it already. Okay. What do you want me to look now, or?
Yeah, because check it out. There is also this multicultural stuff within his book, as you can see.
All right, yeah, so Children and Same-Sex Families, a Legal Handbook. Yeah, I mean, that's weird. I don't think anyone can see what's on the screen, but it's a white guy and a black guy who are 2 parents, and then there's a little white kid that is their adopted child, I'm imagining. Yeah, that's weird. I don't really know what else to add, but I don't believe that same-sex couples should be able to have children. I think children need a mother and a father.
So we have about 3 more minutes left. I know, Laura, you agreed to do an hour, and you'll probably have to go soon. But is there anything else you wanted to add, or any more questions, Alejandro or Doug?
I don't have anything else to add. Just thanks for inviting me on. I know that we've been trying to arrange it for a while, but the time difference made it rather difficult. But yeah, it's been fun. So thank you for the invitation.
Oh, absolutely. And then could they find you anywhere else, or just Defend Europa?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. My handle is This Is Laura T. And Defend Europa are on Twitter as well. I've got my own YouTube channel as well. I only started it 2 months ago, but I have 6 videos up, and there's another one coming tomorrow as well. So you can check out my YouTube channel if you want to hear a woman talk about politics, or if not, there's Defend Europa, which is 34 guys and 1 female. So if you check out our website, like I said, there's about 1,000 articles on there.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Laura. I mean, it was a pleasure to have you on, and there's a lot of things that I didn't know in Europe until now, but it's got me thinking a little bit more on like what's really going in Europe, because I don't really I don't really follow what's going on down there, because I don't really have much information on it. I do have fellow Eurasian nationalists that live in parts of Europe, and sometimes when they are available, I usually ask them like, "Hey, what's going on over there?" But
yeah, I mean, if you are interested in what's going on in Europe and you just want a very kind of quick snapshot, then do check out Defend Europa, because a lot of the articles that we write will just be like 300 to 500 words, and it will just tell you exactly what's going on in that country, and it will just be facts with a nationalist spin, so you don't get like the globo homo kind of, anti-white, pro-immigration spin on it like you would do if you read the article on the BBC. But for people that are short on time, Defend Europe is great, because, like I say, they're kind of snappy sort of short articles about what's going on in Italy or what's going on in Hungary or Britain. But all the information's there that you need, really. You can read it in less than 5 minutes.
sounds good. Anything else, Alejandro or Doug, or?
No, I don't have anything to add. More so, I just wanted to thank you for coming in.
No, I learned a lot today. Thanks for coming on, Laura. It was nice having you on.
No problem. Thanks, guys, and thanks to everybody in the chat. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Alrighty, so for the next hour, we actually got a couple of articles we wanted to go over, and once again, we'd like to thank Laura for joining us as our guest. Great person. Be sure to check out Defend Europa too. But Alejandro, I think before the first article we should go over is you were mentioning something about Brazil and Bolsonaro, and something happened this week, correct?
Oh yes, Bolsonaro is right now. He's changing the power dynamic within the Amazon forest, I would say, and he's now making a shift from the indigenous people had an autonomy on this area, but right now he's shifting it towards what was it? I believe it was the Ministry of Agriculture. Yeah, of Agriculture, and now they are also trying to sell some land and so on for some Israeli firm. I believe that they are going to buy some land like they did within Argentina. So they are already moving. They are already having trying to set a plan B if shit goes down south with Syria. I believe that's why they are making all these moves, and Bolsonaro is facilitating all of this.
So when I think you talked about this a week ago, it's kind of the plan for what's going on with Europe and the U.S., and it's kind of like a backup plan for them to move when things hit down south here, or when they feel like it's, after they destroy Europe and the U.S. and they don't want to be in this mess, that they have like a plan B to go to, like a second home, if they don't want to move to Israel, which is surprising because you would think they would move to Israel instead. But yeah, I just thought that was really interesting with that article about Brazil. There hasn't really been much going on in the news about Brazil. I've been trying to look up online, and the ones that there is articles, it's just, I think because it's still early in his term, but he's made some good he says some good things, but I'm just curious. There was a video that I saw a couple of weeks ago that had to do with there's like a migrant, or like a center for Venezuelans trying to claim asylum, or it was for Venezuelan refugees, and it was like a little camp for them. And I guess the week during Bolsonaro's term, they had like a demonstration with all the Bolsonaro supporters, and they had like a giant bulldozer, and they pretty much demolished that Venezuelan shelter for the Venezuelan refugees. And does Bolsonaro have any plans of deporting them right away, or is he what's the plan here?
No, he just wants to pick a fight with I believe it was with. First, he wanted to name drop the FARC, I believe, from Colombia, but then he started to pick a fight with Venezuela, not just because of the migrants, but ideological reasons. And for example, we just need to see at his cabinet. In his cabinet, he has this guy. A lot of the disciples of this guy, who is basically a neoconservative, like your neoconservative, a neoconservative philosopher called Olavo de Carvalho. And Olavo de Carvalho is actually a guy who debated Dugin as well, and he's, like I said, he's basically like an Irving Kristol type of guy, but without the genetics. But he's basically the same type of thing. And all of his disciples, all of the Richard Perls and all these type of people are going right now into entering the places of power within Brazil. Aside from that, talking about the Venezuelans, they tried to make a demonstration over here to the embassy and basically got stomped by many different patriots and nationalists from my country. So nobody likes them, actually.
Yeah, funny you mentioned that too. But I noticed about Bolsonaro's, I guess they were whining, the globalist media was whining because pretty much all of his cabinet members are guys. And they're saying, sexist and it's typical Bolsonaro. But I'm actually glad that his ministers or his cabinet members are all men. I mean, Donald Trump kind of cocked, and that's why, you have Gina Haspel as a, head of the CIA, or you had Nimrata Haley as the UN ambassador, though she did resign. Or even worse, you got John Kelly's coffee girl, Kirsten Nielsen, that's or Christian Nielsen, that's the head of Department of Homeland Security, and she is awful, and I think she's like a cat lady too. I don't think she has a husband or anything or children, and she's one of those women where she pretty much got the position because she's a woman, and I think Trump was afraid to be called a sexist.
Isn't it kind of neat? Did you see that article the other day? It was talking about how all four of the major defense contractors, I think Albert and Raytheon, Boeing, and whatever the other one is, all their CEOs are women now. I think that's going to play into a really interesting dynamic, being that you've got this entire neocon legacy of just 30 years of now that it's all equalized, you're going to see a whole lot of I can bomb as many places as the boys club.
Well, let me ask Alejandro. I want to ask you, by any chance, is there, the Venezuelans, do they have any intention of trying to return back to their homeland? Because one of the things that I've noticed, because I'm in an organization here of Cuban patriots, and they've been trying to come together with the Venezuelans, but the Venezuelans tend to not want to give money for the cause. They tend not to want to fight. And unfortunately, money is required in these circumstances. Do you guys experience the same thing over there?
Yeah. These people are actually not fighters. They have never ever had a war with anyone. For example, we had a war with Ecuador. We made a blitzkrieg to them. We had a fight with Colombia. With Brazil, we never had a fight. But then we also had a fight with the narcos, with the communists, then also with the Chileans. With Bolivians, not much. And then, but anyone has had a fight with someone, but except for the Venezuelans. So that actually tells you the mentality of this type of people. They are not fighters. They are not used to fight. And this is why they, for example, what we saw in Brazil when they got kicked out of the north part of the country, they didn't fight back. They just pick up all their stuff and return to Venezuela.
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed here is, when we try to get them to give up some sort of money, the older Cuban nationalists, they say that they don't even give them money, that they don't even want to. It's kind of like they don't want to recapture their nation. It's kind of sad, to be completely honest.
That is pretty sad. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, I was just going to add, because you would think, their ancestral homeland that was taken from them, and they would want to take it back, especially if you have people who were alive pre-Castro during the Castro Revolution, where they lost their properties, and they would want to get that back, because that was, their everything.
Yeah, I guess it's definitely the conquistador spirit is not in them. It just seems to me it's something that's just been completely eradicated from them.
Do you think the U.S. government has no interest of reclaiming Cuba, or is it just they're worried that if they go back, it's not going to be easy to take it back? They're going to have to deal with a lot, and it's kind of a demoralizing.
Well, the thing is, it's a complex situation because, when you had the Vietnam War, you had the United States claiming to, fight against communism, right? But in reality, they had an island 90 miles away that had communists in it. So if they really wanted to get rid of communism, they could have done it. But it seems to be that the United States wants to have Cuba as a communist nation. So it doesn't. I don't see change happening there, especially with the people that are in there now. I mean, Cuba has now just kind of regressed into an age of kind of, decadence and it's just a terrible place. You have a different type of people, different type of spirit, or if anything, no spirit actually, probably I would say. So, the United States depends a lot on what happens with the United States to see if Cuba one day will be free.
I also wanted to add too with Bolsonaro. He's not a big fan of Cuba. He says they're a bunch of communists, and I don't think he's going to take any action in Cuba either. But what was funny is that they're sending back a bunch of Cuban doctors, apparently under the communist rule in Britain or in Brazil for so long. They brought in a bunch of doctors from Cuba to work in the medical field because apparently they had a shortage of doctors in Brazil, but they did such a bad job because their standards in Cuba aren't as high. And Bolsonaro's like, yeah, they need to go back, and we need to get more Brazilians, actual Brazilians, to become doctors. But I just don't see anyone getting involved in Cuba. And Trump has said some things about Cuba, but like I say, I don't think he's going to get involved either. And he's too busy trying to pass criminal justice reform and let out more criminals into this into our streets. And
I see Latin America because Latin America, this is big for Latin America. Cuba and everything. I mean, Venezuela, all these places. This is bigger than just these two nations, right? Like you start to see this spillover from Venezuela into Peru, into other areas as well, right? And you start to have this communist influence. It's going to seep into your nation. All these nations should have a vested interest in stomping out communism, even if it is going to Cuba and stomping it out there. All these nations have to have a vested interest because it will creep in little by little, as what's happened in this nation, as what's happened in Cuba, as has happened in Tsarist Russia. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time if these nations don't come together and stomp it out.
Exactly. Since we're still talking about Brazil, I know Joaquim talked about how it'd be in a country's best interest to make sure Venezuela doesn't nationalize the oil, or I think they already nationalized the oil, but making sure the Chinese don't get involved in kind of imperialize Venezuela because of all the oil they have. But I wonder if Brazil, if one of the motivations, but they don't talk about it, is getting involved with Venezuela too, is the oil. Because Brazil does export a lot of oil, and they see Venezuela, and it's like, well, if we could oust Maduro and the communist government in Venezuela, and we could try to get control of some of the oil rigs over there, and we could have more oil. And maybe, when I remember when we had Joaquim on one of the old Minority Reports, and I asked about this, and with all the oil they have, maybe Bolsonaro, since he's very friendly with Trump, or he's on good terms with President Trump, like they make some sort of trade deal where they trade oil, and in return Brazil gets whatever America's good at exporting.
My main problem with Bolsonaro with the oil company is that he wants to sell it to international financiers and pretty much put it up for sale on the stock market and just let anybody buy it up. Just not really nationalistic, if you ask me.
Yeah, and that's what Alejandro, you were talking about, that he still his economic advisors are from the Chicago school. They're a bunch of free market people, and unfortunately, he probably thinks this is a sign of free trade, even though it would be in his own interest to trade with certain countries that are going to benefit both countries, instead of just selling the oil to whoever, you know.
Yeah, I mean, look at who Milton Friedman actually is. That says a lot. But anyways, talking about China and their involvement, I have talked to Chileans and also to people from the Argentinians, and what they say is that China is right now trying to expand their fishing operations. They are, for example, they say that at night, if you see a satellite, a picture from the satellite from the city of, I believe it's Valparaíso, which is on the south, and from Buenos Aires, which is from the capital of Argentina. You see, like there is like a small island over there, and these are like 1,000 Chinese boats fishing. They do have interest within South America, and we have been seeing that right now. I feel that we need to get rid. Actually, I agree that we need to get rid of Maduro, but it's not. This is not the way, because right now we need to focus inward and then outward with kicking out the Chinese, because we see China starting to ally themselves with Israel more and more over the past few years and even few months. So it's not smelling good. I don't see something good on the horizon for us, for any of us.
And
I could actually see that, because it seems like the global power is shifting from the United States and it's moving towards China. And it just seems that that's the shift that these type of people want. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. I'm just going to add to Joaquim. I know that some people had some disagreements with Joaquim on his stance on China, but before I was kind of mixed about China, but I think Joaquim's not lying. This is from Asia too, like Mongolia, Japan, Taiwan, even Vietnam. They're worried about China getting involved in their countries again, and it's more of we shouldn't do the I would rather have China take over us than Zog, but because China, like you guys mentioned, like Xi Jinping is getting friendly with Netanyahu, and they're having trade deals. They're becoming close friends. I think David Duke had some posts about it on Twitter, and it's just like, are you sure you would rather have China imperialize this country over Zog? Because I don't think there's going to be a difference.
Yeah, and China's pretty brutal when it comes to colonization, taking over new areas. Just look at what happened to Singapore. It was like hardly any Chinese there.
Didn't we cover that port that got built in Kenya? They essentially took over that giant port. I'm not sure if it was Kenya, but somewhere
it was that or Zambia, one of them.
Yeah, they pretty much got control of this port just by lending just a exorbitant amount of money to the country that they inevitably would never be able to pay back. It's the same model the IMF would use to take over resources in India, in South America. It's an IMF playbook used a lot in the 80s. When you go to an area where they do not have the either collective IQ or the ability or infrastructure or the skilled populace to be able to maintain a first world, but you make loans to them and you build the infrastructure, and then when they can't pay it back, you just take it over as part of the debt repayment. And that's what they did to the single largest port, I think it was, in West Africa.
It's all sneak attacks. They don't, they do it without firing a shot or without using force or sending down troops to invade. They just do it by buying up properties or infrastructure that's in a lot of debt or a country can't afford. And then they say, well, if you can't pay it off, you're pretty much owned by us now. And now they take control of the infrastructure and ports. And next thing you know, Like, these African countries have no sovereignty whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, and there's ways to influence a country besides like just straight up measuring the trade deficits isn't the only metric to measure like a country's economic aggression or, you know, action on you for them to, you know, come and buy up a factory in America. Like, there's nothing illegal about it. They just have to declare it.
So I don't know if you guys have anything else to add. Oh, Raphael.
I was going to say, when China goes into these African countries, they don't even hire the local Africans to work at their companies. They bring their own workers from China to work at them.
That are like Filipinos.
They even have their own separate police force just for Chinese people that are living in those countries.
Well, like that's what all the Arab countries do. Is they import people from, you know, like South Asian countries by the masses for, you know, either sex work, like housework, like jobs that they don't want to do themselves. Wouldn't surprise me if China follows that same kind of format. But they've got a lot of labor to pull from too, I guess.
So, I mean, that's all I had about it. I think.
Well, you have.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying. We also are forgetting the social credit system that they have implemented over there.
That's right.
You know, where if you probably have any nationalistic leanings, you're probably not going to be able to ride your local bus or take your local train.
I wonder if we could ever have something like that here, Dan. I wonder who would have the lowest social credit in America. I wonder if, your social credit has to be this high to ride the bus. We know how that would look.
That would be so overwhelmingly colored individuals. That's all we can say, right? That's what we would see, and that's what it would be. I mean, in a sense, that's what China seems to me. It's becoming like this very dystopian place where, you know, you're literally can't even ride a bus, you know, and this type of stuff is the type of behavior of, you know, a complete tyrants, right?
Speaking of tyrants or tyranny, you hear about actually, let's cover Steve King first. About Steve King, where apparently he made a statement which is true, but at the same time people got their jimmies wrapped up, both the Republican and Democrat Party. And of course Ben Shapiro was whining and saying he needs to get expelled from the GOP because he says, what's so controversial about the term white nationalism or white supremacy? And then he ends up writing like a letter apologizing and backing down. And it's a real shame because I know a lot of people on the dissident right kind of thought as Steve King as like one of the only hopes in the GOP because he was kind of an anti-immigration hawk. But at the same time, Richard did make a good point. He still has his allegiance to Israel, and he's more of a civic nationalist that's anti-illegal immigration. And then you hear stuff about him apologizing finally and backing down. I think Joaquim posted about it too, or he talked about it. But it's
in
really
other
sad.
words, in other words, depressing BoomerCon does depressing BoomerCon shit, and instead of redeeming himself in any capacity, which none of us really expect. Do we ever expect anyone to like dog whistle who's actually in? I mean, yeah, we get it out of Tucker Carlson every once in a blue moon, but we don't ever expect one of these fucking boomer neocons to ever do anything like awe-worthy or awe-inspiring. We knew exactly where it was going.
In his defense, it was more like they got him out of context. He was more asking when the hell did white supremacy and white nationalism become so controversial and in the news all the time. It's not like saying that it was like a great thing. He's just asking why is everybody obsessed with it all of a sudden. And they really took his comment he made with that interview and just really ran with it, taking it out of context.
Well, that's the thing, though, is that's just playing into their hands every time. Every single time if you walk up to that line, if you walk up to the line, you're going to get knocked the fuck off of it every single time. Like, the only way you're not going to get burned alive for questioning, well, I just don't know what's wrong with being a white nationalist. Anytime you go about it in, like, a pussyfoot way, yeah, you're going to get messed up on it. And then he gives his little apologies. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to, I'm going to be a good boy now.
And when Lauren Chen, roaming millennial, and she's a fellow Eurasian, sadly, and she's also on that conservative train. I think she still works for CRTV with Mark Levin and Crowder and them, and she's disavowing Steve King. Like, she puts on her retweeting what Steve King said, and she's like, disavow, and GOP needs to punish him. And of course, I retweeted back, and I'm like, Lauren, you're not really doing any good cause for the Eurasian nationalists, or for Eurasians in general, being anti-white and doing all this cucking. And this idea that, you're a Christian first and a Eurasian second is just ridiculous. Or no, it's even worse for her. It's you're a Christian first and conservative second. Doing this mud principles, or, we're all based minorities. It's like, wake up, Lauren. It's, this cucking and everything. You think you're going to gain more minority support by doing this and disavowing Steve King? No, I guarantee you there were non-white Trump supporters that believed in what Steve King meant until he cucked, and now they probably lost hope in him too. But it's just, this is what I have to deal with in my circle, because most of the Eurasians that aren't leftist incels from our Hapas, they're either libertarians, still citing and spouting off like libertarian talking points like non-aggression principle and private property like it's 2011, or they're just conservatives with these CivNet ideas, and a lot of them kind of disavow whites and the majority of the party. They think, oh, we're going to win more support with, running like Tommy Lauren. It's like running on low taxes and or what was the other one? Or pro-life, and it's just, they really don't care about that, to be honest. And if you go to flyover country and you go to these states and you talk about low taxes, they're like, what are you talking about? Our taxes are already low. Why are you talking about tax cuts? And they have different, the conservatives in the coastal states are a lot different because they run on, mud taxes. The flyover country, they have more of a different view on economics, but they're socially conservative. So it's just ridiculous. And it's a shame. And it's
Also,
oh, what's up?
I wanted to, for example, talking about these type of people who say that they are conservative. Actually, they are not really conservative in the sense of, for example, Arthur van den Broek he was from the Austrian conservative revolution. These are not this type of people. These type of people who call themselves conservatives are actually conservative liberals, and this came about with the time of Benjamin Disraeli within the UK. He actually created a party called the Conservative Party and subverted the Whigs and the Tories, which were the true conservatives and the liberals. He made a blend of them, something like that, and actually subverted it. Like these people are always going to do this, and they subverted the concepts, and he came into power, and it became the merchants' empire. That's where this type of conservatism comes from.
Right, and I think this is, since we have about half an hour left, I think we should carry this over to like what James Allsup, and you have these alt-right people and these MAGA Ps wherever they still exist, where they think it's like, oh, we need to take over the GOP, we just need to go undercover, we need to just take over the party. Well, even if we tried, like some boomer normie moderate conservatives going to find out and try to get you kicked out of the party. That's what happened with James Allsup. because of his white nationalist views. And I remember like in Washington, like some of the GOP members in the Washington GOP party were not happy with James Allsup getting elected, and they tried to do everything in their power to make sure that he wasn't in office. And it's just so this idea that, you know, we could just cheerlead off the Republican Party and Trump, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, this guy was democratically elected, and the GOP just ignores the will of the people and kicks him out of the committee. What's the point even having elections then? Why are we playing games and calling this country a democracy if they can kick somebody out that was democratically elected because they have views they don't like?
Yeah, they just want a slight change from the status quo, right? Like they just want a slight change. And I kind of see the Conservative Party just kind of like, I saw this funny meme that was saying in 10 years, the Conservative Party, wow, we got a base pedophile here. Like I could literally see something like of that type of ridiculous type of statement being made. It's what they are. They're just kind of the gatekeepers. And for anybody who believes that the TPUSA and this whole Candace Owens and Trump and all this shit and the GOP, it's dead. It's gone. It's lost. It's been lost for a long time. And it's not going to resurrect and become this party for us.
And even when we were all just libertarians, part of that Christopher Cantwell wing, or kind of like Austin Peterson and them, even we were questioning the Republican Party back then, those conservatives. It was like, what are they conserving? Do they have any ideas or solutions? I know the libertarians, it was all these solutions and ideas, but it was all utopian. But all the Republicans did was either run on tax cuts or they would just critique the Democrats. It's like, they'll just critique a Democrat's policies or proposals or their beliefs, or they will disagree with it, but they wouldn't offer a counter solution or a way to fix the problem. They're just there to say, no, I don't like it, or no, I don't agree with it, or it's like, no, this is not what I stand for. And that's why a lot of people went to libertarianism before they went downhill and gotten so cucked that everyone's now part of the dissident right.
I think it took the age of this overstimulation of social media and mainstream media for us to realize, like you had to live in the echo chamber of 2015 to now of politics to realize just how much of it was performativeness. I mean, maybe 20, 30 years ago, it wasn't as easy to, make these YouTube highlight reels of every single person, conservative or Democrat or what have you, contradicting themselves 20, 30 times over a career of never experiencing anything close to a term limit and just having this unbridled power. And then on top of that, subsequently having them go on to hold unelected positions for even longer and have even more power. The conservatives haven't conserved shit, and the progressives haven't progressed towards anything worth a damn.
Yeah, it's crazy. You look at the conservative movement, and you have people like Blair White, who's a transgender person, being a big spokesperson. And then you have this, I forgot who it was, but there's also a transgender that works for Breitbart. She's like a Polish person. And she kind of looked like a man looked like a woman if you didn't know she was transgender at first. And they're just putting transgender people as like the forefront for conservatism now. Like they're just retreating. They're losing ground. They're not even, I don't know what they're conserving.
You see Charlie Kirk, for example, when he has a room full of black people, and what I hate most is conservatives, right? Like they see this like, oh wow, there's a room full of black base people, right? And then like 90% of them are still voting Democrat. Like it's just like it's lost with these people, man. Like they just really care about their money. They just care about their money in a sense, and it's the most important thing. Conservatism is just economic. That's all it is. It's nothing much more than that.
Well, conservatism is just progressivism slowed down by like 3-4 years.
Yeah,
they pretty much gave up on the social issues and just focused on the economic ones, and nobody really likes that.
Well, yeah, they don't address the culture issues. They think, and conservatives are known for doing this, liberals too, where they think the GDP or the economy is what determines how great a country is or how in good shape the country is, never mind the culture. I would also like to add too, which is really getting on my nerves, when you guys were talking about the Charlie Kirk thing and with all those black conservatives that went to meet Trump and Candace Owens doing her little swindling and or grifting and getting all those black base supporters. It's not like they got more supporters, they got more blacks red-pilled. Those were the 9% that already voted for Trump. So every time they have those black conservative events and whatnot, like all those people already voted for Trump in 2015. It was they didn't gain a single supporter. But it's that false sense where they think it's like, oh, they're getting more of them, we're going to get more of their votes next election. No, these were the people that already supported them. They're just saying it out in the open that they voted for him. And,
Look at Trump, for example, when he goes and he's hanging a gay flag and pandering to these people, and it's supposed to be virtuous. Oh, Trump is base because he's pandering to the transgender community or whatever, or the queer community or whatever the hell other acronyms that they have. It's just ridiculous to this point. And to me, the conservatives are, especially the boomer conservatives, that just think that this is going to be, that Trump is going to be the god to restore, and the QAnon and the 4D chest and all just this ridiculous stuff. And
here's the thing. Here's the thing. With what you've learned, everything, like every red pill you've taken, with what you've learned about multiculturalism and diversity, even in the areas where it works well, even in places where you have decent social trust, even diversity at its best and CivNat land functioning at its most efficient, it's still not efficient. It's why would you ever want to go back? People think I'm really radical when I look them in the face and say, you know what? Maybe I would like to entertain the idea of living in a neighborhood where I don't answer to a black cop, to a Mexican cop, to someone who has this deep-seated, cultural hatred towards me. And not only just a cop, how about my president? How about my governor? Especially, in 2019 when there's just these all-out, they're not even trying to hide the all-out war against everything that is our heritage.
Especially, that you have these standards, right? So for example, in North Miami, there was a standard that cops, had to know how to swim to become cops. But now, since they wanted to be more multicultural, diverse, they took away that standard to allow Haitians to be able to enter the police force. I mean, if they can't fucking swim, why are they cops?
And crazier than that is some people's this experiment our country's been in for the past 50 years, this equality joke where we just completely discount the physical abilities of men. As I'd say it's easier to red pill people on race more so than even getting them to accept something like women should not be cops. Women should not be in combat. Women should barely be in the military unless it's something at a desk or administrative.
Like a support role.
Yeah, women in the military, women in your police force will get you killed. If you want to rely on a woman to make split-second decisions in matters of pretty much security at any level, you're going to be in a bad situation. You should never delegate those decisions to them.
But what about the fact that they joined the workforce, right? The fact that they're joining the workforce, abandoning their kids, abandoning a biological instinct that's in them, just so they could get themselves a little bit more consumer items, some more TVs, some more clothes, or some bullshit.
Yeah, so they can go out and compete with, the only people who can help them produce and live a semblance of a normal or traditional life.
Also, I needed to do this difference between traditionalists and conservative, because a traditionalist believe that there needs to be a return to all these transcendental questions, to all of our true roots that made us who we are right now. And the issue with this is that liberalism actually moved along with modernity and basically destroyed and eroded all of these type of important things for us as different peoples and different civilizations and different societies. But furthermore, to the question, to what you said, and people think that you are really radical for this, is that there is a difference between a conservative and a revolutionary. A revolutionary actually has a vision for the future and for his people, but a conservative is actually just watching how things move and works with how things move and doesn't really go furthermore to other topics or to other questions, to other forces. That's why conservatives will always get stumped, whether it be by liberals that we saw in the French Revolution, whether it be for Marxists like we saw with the Russian Revolution and others, or whether it be by fascists like we saw in Europe and in my country as well, and so on. But the issue with this is that conservatives are always going to throw you under the bus. They are always going to betray you, because conservatism actually tries to conserve the status quo within they feel comfortable. That's the main issue, and you need to address this issue. Always remember that conservative is not really your friend. He can be useful, but he's not your friend.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. I mean, it's the conservatives playing within the bounds of neoliberalism, right? Would you agree with that?
Pretty much.
That's what it is. It's them playing within there, trying to maintain what they currently have at the moment, right? Like, I mean, the boomers are literally trying to just maintain the amount of money that they earned. They didn't practice any austerity during their time period, during their lifetime, so they don't know what it's like to even to struggle for other people, to try to bring something for your own people, just for yourself. And it was this individualism mentality that was poisoned by people like Ayn Rand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound too David Hoggish or anything like that, but if you're listening to anyone over the age of 40, like, if they had the answers, if they could figure out what the fuck to do, they would have done it. But like trying to reappeal, like Spencer always goes, trying to reappeal to that TPUSA talking head, the based minority crowd. You can bang your head against a wall all day trying to make that mousetrap work. It doesn't work.
What's funny is, like, even like guys like me, Alejandro, Dan, and Rafael, like, we even understand this too. We're familiar with demographics and party preference. Lee Kuan Yew, who was the first ever president of Singapore, said it best: in a multiracial society, people vote within their racial and religious interests, not their social and economic interests, which is pretty much the case. That's why, it's always 70% of Hispanics and Asians vote for the Democrat Party, and 90% blacks vote for the Democrat Party.
Exactly. They really need to understand that. They're wasting their time trying to convince people to vote for the other party. I mean, they're not even looking into issues. They're really just voting based on racial preferences. Like, Asians, they're pretty smart, but they're voting because they want lax immigration to invite more of their relatives in.
Exactly, and that's what they don't understand. Like, I don't want to hear this, they're all conservatives. No, the ones coming to the West, especially coming to the U.S., aren't the nationalists or the traditionalist kind of people. It's the cosmopolitan ones, the ones with a lot of money, the ones with the globalist mindset. And what they do not understand, too, is, like, they still have a chance to win more elections. Like, if the GOP reached out to more white working class voters and more white voters instead of focusing on getting 2% more of the base Hispanic, black, or Asian voters, they could still be in good shape for another, or kind of a couple more election cycles. But no, they're not. And what happens is that a lot of these white voters, they stay home because they are the swing voters in this country. They're too busy trying to vote for those minorities or trying to reach out to those couple percent extra minority voters, but it's just not there. And it's just, maybe this idea
that or they're not even concerned with that. They're not concerned about a couple extra dollars here and there. The tax, any and all tax cuts over the past 20 years, any tax policy, it doesn't really change that much in the working class. Well, at least it hasn't changed drastically. It's been just slowly stagnant for so long that white middle class that is the swing vote doesn't really appeal to that. They don't really care about issues they can't really see. I can say because most everyone outside my sphere in the streaming community is, completely oblivious to everything going on in the world. I mean, forget about fucking talking about fractional reserve banking in the Fed when you can't convince someone that there's an active campaign to make them go extinct in their own country. Even when they do acknowledge that you're less than 5% of a global minority.
Yeah, I'm still on the cusp on whether to vote for Trump next election in 2020, but right now it's not leaning towards that unless that wall is built, because that's a big promise. If he doesn't, it's going to be like George H.W. Bush with his "read my lips, no new taxes," or
not to be Fed posty, but like seriously, I don't think we can afford someone like a Kamala Harris or an Elizabeth Warren. Because like Stryker likes to say, when Democrats have power, they fucking wield it.
Oh, and they did in California after '87 when Reagan passed the amnesty bill.
That pendulum that's out there in the ether, like if it swings back in the wrong way and we're on the receiving end of it, I don't think. I think you will see that, those isolated conflicts breaking out, because that's too. I think my buddy was saying the other day something like 80% of our population is from post 1960s immigration. We're worse than the Roman Empire whenever it comes to the vacuum of diversity we've created in our own backyards.
Well, what do you guys think of if I were to give you? So, for example, let's say someone extremely radical on the left ends up winning the next election, and I think in a sense it's good because it kind of will radicalize, I think, the right wing. I think many people in the right wing, because I mean, if we have another, let's say, Trump winner, it gives people kind of like this false sense of hope. Right, like that this person or this great person is going to work within the system and destroy, the Democrats or whatever. Right? What do you guys think about that?
Well, sometimes
go ahead, man.
I was just going to say, sometimes people say sometimes things have to get worse before they get better.
Yeah, that's the idea, because it doesn't seem to me. Look, we all know there will be conflict in the future. I none of us doubt that. It's just the temper, how long we're going to prolong it, right? If we get another, let's say, Trump person or someone like that gets in, it's going to be even more of the same, just like the stagnation within our political system, right? If someone that's just completely apeshit crazy that goes in there, that's a Democrat, and just completely radicalizes everyone, wants to put transgenders to teach kids at every grade level. I mean, I'm pretty sure they would institute some sort of policy like that, which would radicalize a lot of people.
Yeah, I might actually vote for Richard Spencer if Trump doesn't make do with his wall, because it's going to be impossible for him to win any other way. The demographics are going to be way against him.
It's almost
I agree. He's got my vote too. I look at it as kind of like the more that we wait, the worse it's going to be in the future.
Right. And how I see it too, it's remember Barack Obama in '08 when he made the promise of single payer health care. He had 60 votes in the Senate to get it. He had 60 Democrats in the Senate. Well, he could have passed it right away, except Ted Kennedy passed away the year after, so they couldn't change up the bill. But even when Ted Kennedy was still alive, they could have passed that single payer bill, but they didn't. They passed the Affordable Health Care Act, which was pretty much Romney care at a federal level. Look at what happened when he made that promise of single payer health care and didn't get it. It screwed him up politically. He lost all his political capital, and he lost a lot of party members in Congress, or a lot of seats in Congress. And I'm worried if Trump doesn't build that wall, it's going to happen to him too.
I mean, have you seen the latest meeting that Trump had with the Border Patrol, I believe it was?
Kind of.
Yeah, we covered that last week. Or are you talking about the video where he's actually being recorded speaking to them about the other foreign nationals being found from the people who were crossing the border who were not they weren't Central Americans. They said he was talking to a Border Patrol agent who said something along the lines of they detained 400 people who were not natives of a Central American country.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They were people from China, from Asia, from
Bangladesh.
Bangladesh. Yeah. So it's more. It is more than just the Central Americans.
Well, that's the thing. In California's a perfect example because whites are the minority. They only make up 37% of the population. Even if you deport every single illegal immigrant and close the border, whites are still on the verge of becoming a minority because their fertility rates isn't as high as the non-whites in this country. You would also have to shut down legal immigration and birthright citizenship. But I don't think Trump's going to do that.
I mean, realistically, they're going to need. Even if we do get this wall situation sorted out, the way things are structured right now, as they are, have been ineffective to prevent or put us off of this course of this massive demographic displacement. That's why I don't even. I realistically don't have any hope for places like California, at least not Northern California, to be able to pull itself out of the bootstraps. Maybe like the central and more desert areas, because, I mean, the fact of the matter is that these people with low IQs, low skill sets, just by nature, they are not as resourceful, and so that's why they do not kind of conglomerate around either more rural areas or areas that require lower time preference in cold areas, which is why most of the most homogenous or least diverse states have a lot of the lowest crime, and they're usually over 90% white, with the exception of a couple central, southern states like Tennessee and Kentucky. But as it stands right now, you're going to need a reform of how you mitigate immigration, not only at the federal level, but you're going to need a state level that's more authoritative than your federal level, because our federal immigration is the lackadaisical. The federal immigration monitoring is what has faltered because that's supposed to be way more efficient than having to worry about who's being trafficked in and out of your own state.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the part about the demographic issue amongst white people. I hear a lot of people say it's because of income, that white people don't make enough money. However, blacks and Hispanics, they make less money than white people, sometimes much less money than white people, but they have double or even triple the amount of kids. So this demographic issue is much deeper than how much income a white couple is bringing in. We need an actual answer to this. I don't think it's just solely economic.
Yeah, because for example, it's also cultural, because these issues are being pushed down in academia. Academia is being sprouted. The academia ideas are being sprouted as propaganda, and propaganda is also brought up to normal people within radio stations, television shows, and within newspapers, all this kind of stuff. So it's not just merely a question of economics, as you say. There is more to the question, like the propaganda issue that is being pushed down by the academia and all of these think tanks paid by the likes of George Soros, or maybe even the Rockefellers, and so on and so on.
Yeah, women are pretty much told that, especially the ones that go to college, that they need to focus on their career first before having a family. So I think that might have something to do with it as well, because we do see college-educated white women have like one kid, maybe like when they're in their mid-30s, compared to non-college educated women. They have more kids. But who knows? I think we do need people in alt-right need to have a more deeper investigation on why birth numbers are low across the world, pretty much. And I just don't think when they say it's because incomes are down, it doesn't make much sense, because other groups have less income and they're having more children.
Yeah. So we're reaching near the 2-hour mark. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add before we start to wrap it up?
I believe that there is one last issue, and this might be that you have to watch out for another type of solution outside of the box. We have seen the GOP kicking out James Alsop and denouncing Steve King, doing character assassinations and so on and so on. So I believe for now that there are few ways that you can actually counter the establishment. But I am not so sure that if this is not starting to make the infrastructure that you need first, I don't know if this would succeed like out of the blue or not. That's my issue.
Yeah. But yeah, if you guys don't have anything else to add, then yeah, we'll just get ready to wrap it up. But so Doug, what was the situation with the Imperium channel? You said that you guys didn't get a strike, or did you guys? It was just they wanted you to shut down the video.
I don't even know. I don't think that's excuse me. I don't think that's really happening anymore. If you guys can see in the live chat, Roman is now doing Horovero, which he informed me, and it looks like, I don't know if it's just a guest appearance, but it looks like, I guess Jared Howe is like a permanent panelist on there now. So if you guys want some really good content, that's Roman's new permanent gig with Pinoche Ball and IANCAP, who is does stuff with Gustus Invictus. But yeah, so they ended up doing that, and I'll probably be revolving, showing up on there every once in a while. But I'm indefinitely over here on the Minority Report crew. So thanks for having me on.
Alrighty.
Yeah, so me and Dan, I kind of put a big hiatus on this hour. It's 56 minutes, but I'm hoping that me and Dan can do an episode this week at least. We'll see what happens.
Yep, it's work, man. It's always gets in the way of our schedule, but you got to do what you got to do to pay the bills. And then Alejandro, you had quite a few live streams last week. Any plans or future live streams this week, or is it just well, for both actually, your English and your Spanish live stream? Any upcoming
Yeah. I am trying to get this guy Matthew Drake, but he recently became a father, so he's kind of busy right now. But I might get E. Michael Jones this week, and we are going to address how to subvert a religion. That's going to be the topic of our conversation.
And what about the Spanish live stream? Do you have anyone lined up yet, or is it still in the works?
Yeah. Within Spanish, I am going to have a guy from Chile, and we are going to talk about Juche, the Juche idea. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, that's all we got. But other than that, guys, thank you for tuning in. And without further ado, we will see you next week. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, guys.